After the dinosaurs disappeared, Earth entered a new time called the Cenozoic Era. It began about 66 million years ago. The planet slowly changed as land, oceans and climate shifted. Mammals began to grow in number and spread across different regions. Birds also became more common in the skies. Plants developed in many areas and forests expanded in some regions, while grasslands formed in others. The continents moved toward positions similar to today. Oceans supported many forms of marine life, including fish and smaller sea creatures. The climate changed several times over long periods, affecting living things and their distribution across the planet. New ecosystems formed gradually in many regions across land and ocean environments over long periods ongoing. So what was Earth like during this time? The beginning of the Cenozoic Era started after a major change in Earth's living world, when many large reptiles that once dominated land and sea were no longer present. This time marked a new stage in Earth's natural history, where life forms began to spread into open ecological spaces that had been left unoccupied. The surface of the planet carried many signs of change, including altered land environments, shifting climates, and renewed growth of living systems in soil, water, and air. The atmosphere held different balances of gases, and sunlight reached Earth with conditions that supported gradual expansion of new life forms in many regions. Oceans continued their long movement across basins, and continents carried new patterns of rivers, valleys, and coastlines shaped by slow geological forces. In the early phase of this era, small mammals began to spread into many parts of land environments. These mammals had existed during earlier geological periods, but their presence remained limited in size and diversity. With the new conditions that followed major ecological disruption, many of these mammals developed wider forms and greater variation in body structure. Some remained small and moved through forest floors and underground spaces, while others began to occupy open plains, wetlands, and forest edges. Their diets included plant materials, insects, and small animals, depending on availability in local environments. Reproduction cycles supported steady population growth, and this allowed gradual expansion across continents. Birds also became more widespread during this time. Many bird groups developed stronger flight abilities, improved feeding methods, and varied nesting habits. Some birds adapted to water environments, while others lived in trees, ground habitats, or open skies. Their presence contributed to the distribution of plant seeds and small organisms across large distances. The structure of their bodies allowed efficient movement through air, and this supported their spread into many ecological zones. Different environments provided food sources such as seeds, fish, insects, and plant material, which helped bird populations increase in number and variety. Reptiles continued to exist in many forms, although their ecological role shifted into new directions. Crocodile-like animals remained present in river systems and wetland areas, where they lived in slow-moving waters and fed on fish and other animals. Lizards occupied dry and warm regions, often hiding under rocks or within vegetation. Snakes spread into forested areas and open land environments, adapting to hunting and movement along ground surfaces and underground spaces. These reptiles maintained survival through varied climates and changing landscapes. Plant life experienced significant expansion during this era. Flowering plants became widely distributed across land surfaces, producing seeds enclosed within protective structures. These plants grew in forests, grasslands, wetlands, and mountain regions. Trees with broad leaves formed dense vegetation in many areas, while smaller plants covered ground surfaces and open spaces. Grass-like plants began to spread in wide regions of dry and open land, creating continuous plant cover in some environments. The spread of plants supported the development of soil systems, nutrient cycles, and food sources for animals of many kinds. Forests in this era contained many layers of plant growth. Tall trees formed upper layers that reached towards sunlight, while smaller plants and shrubs grew beneath them. Ground surfaces were covered with leaves, roots, and organic material that slowly broke down and returned nutrients to soil. Insects lived within these environments, feeding on plants, decaying matter, and other small organisms. Many insect groups developed specialized feeding methods, body structures, and life cycles that allowed them to occupy specific ecological roles. Oceans during the early part of this era contained diverse marine life. Fish species occupied different water depths, from surface waters to deep ocean zones. Some fish developed streamlined body shapes that supported movement through water currents, while others lived near coral structures and seafloor environments. Marine mammals began to develop in later stages of this era, adapting from land-based ancestors into water-based lifestyles. Early forms of these animals moved into shallow waters, feeding on fish and aquatic organisms, and gradually developed physical traits suited for long-term life in marine environments. Coral systems continued to grow in warm ocean regions, forming large structures that supported many marine organisms. These coral environments created spaces for fish, crustaceans, and other marine animals to live and reproduce. Ocean currents distributed nutrients and temperature variations across different marine regions, supporting biological activity in many areas. Shell-forming organisms lived in seafloors and coastal zones, producing mineral structures that accumulated over long periods of time. The land surface of Earth experienced slow but continuous movement due to internal geological processes. Large sections of the crust shifted over long time intervals, forming mountain ranges, valleys, and basins. Rivers changed direction in response to these movements, carving channels through rock and soil. Lakes formed in low-lying regions where water collected over extended periods. Volcanic activity occurred in certain areas, releasing material from beneath the Earth's surface and contributing to new land formation. Ash and lava deposits created new layers of soil and rock that later supported plant growth. Climate conditions during this time shifted gradually across regions. Some areas experienced warm and humid conditions that supported dense plant growth, while other regions developed dry environments with limited water availability. Ice formation occurred in polar regions during later stages of this era, where temperatures supported the accumulation of frozen water over long periods. Seasonal changes influenced rainfall patterns, plant cycles, and animal movement. Atmospheric circulation distributed heat and moisture across continents, shaping environmental conditions in many ways. Early mammals developed various forms of movement adapted to different environments. Some mammals moved through trees using limbs suited for climbing and gripping branches. Others moved across open land using limbs designed for running or walking. Underground mammals developed strong digging structures that allowed them to create tunnels and burrows. Aquatic mammals developed body shapes that supported swimming and movement through water. Feeding habits varied widely, with some species consuming plant material, others feeding on insects, and others consuming a mixture of available food sources. Reproductive systems in mammals supported internal development of young, followed by feeding after birth through milk production. This method allowed young individuals to develop under protection during early life stages. Parental care appeared in many mammal groups, where adults provided protection and food resources for offspring. These behaviors supported survival in environments where conditions changed over time. Bird populations expanded into many ecological niches. Some birds developed long migration patterns that allowed movement across continents during seasonal changes. Others remained within fixed regions and adapted to local conditions. Feeding behaviors included seed consumption, insect hunting, fish capture, and scavenging. Nesting structures varied widely, with some birds building nests in trees, others on cliffs, and others on ground surfaces. Egg development occurred in protected environments, and incubation processes supported growth until hatching. Insect populations became highly diverse during this era. Beetles, ants, butterflies, flies, and many other groups occupied different ecological roles. Some insects fed on plant material, while others fed on decaying matter or other insects. Social organization appeared in certain groups, where individuals worked together in structured colonies. Communication methods developed through chemical signals, movement patterns, and environmental interaction. Insects played important roles in pollination, decomposition, and food chains across many environments. Freshwater systems contained rivers, lakes, and wetlands that supported a wide range of life. Fish, amphibians, insects, and plant life existed in these environments. Water flow carried nutrients and sediments across land surfaces, shaping valleys and floodplains. Seasonal flooding occurred in some regions, spreading nutrients across surrounding land areas and supporting plant growth. Wetlands provided breeding and feeding grounds for many organisms. Amphibians continued to exist in moist environments, living both in water and on land. Their life cycles involved development stages that began in aquatic settings before transitioning to land movement. These animals occupied habitats near rivers, lakes, and wetlands, where moisture levels supported survival. Their diets included insects and small organisms found in damp environments. Soil systems during this era developed through long-term breakdown of rock material and organic matter. Plant roots contributed to soil structure, while decaying organisms added nutrients. Microorganisms in soil played roles in decomposition and nutrient cycling. These processes supported plant growth and maintained ecological balance in many environments. Air circulation patterns influenced weather systems across continents. Winds carried moisture, heat, and particles through atmospheric layers. Rainfall patterns varied across regions, supporting different types of vegetation. Storm systems formed in some areas, bringing heavy precipitation and wind movement that shaped land surfaces. Sunlight influenced temperature distribution and plant growth cycles. Large land mammals began to appear in later stages of this era. Some developed strong limbs for movement across open land, while others developed feeding systems suited for grazing plant material or hunting other animals. Body sizes varied depending on environment and available resources. These mammals occupied ecological roles in grasslands, forests, and mixed environments. Marine ecosystems continued to expand in complexity. Ocean floor environments supported organisms that fed on organic material that sank from upper water layers. Coral reefs provided habitats for many species, while open ocean regions supported migratory fish and marine predators. Temperature and salinity differences influenced marine distribution patterns. Plant evolution continued with increasing diversity in flowering structures, leaf shapes, and reproductive systems. Pollination processes involved insects, wind, and other environmental factors. Seed dispersal occurred through animals, water movement, and wind flow. Forests expanded in some regions while open plant systems developed in others. Geological activity continued shaping Earth's surface through gradual crust movement. Mountain building processes occurred in regions where land sections pressed against each other over long time periods. Mountain building processes occurred in regions where land sections pressed against each other over long time periods. Erosion processes removed material from elevated regions and transported it into lower areas through rivers and wind activity. Sediment accumulation formed new layers in basins and coastal regions. Volcanic regions contributed to atmospheric changes through gas release and ash distribution. These materials influenced climate conditions and soil formation. Lava flows created new land surfaces that later supported plant colonization. Over time, these regions developed ecosystems that included plants, insects, and animals. Early human ancestors began to appear in later stages of this era within limited regions of land. These small primate forms lived in forest environments, moving through trees and ground areas. Their diets included fruits, insects, and plant materials. Their physical structures supported climbing and movement through complex vegetation. Social behavior developed in simple forms involving group living and communication. As time continued, ecosystems developed increasing complexity across land and sea. Interactions between plants, animals, soil, water, and atmosphere created continuous cycles of growth and change. Rivers changed paths, forests expanded and reduced in different regions, and animal populations adjusted to available environments. Ocean systems maintained circulation patterns that distributed nutrients and supported marine life distribution across wide areas. In many land regions, vegetation cover increased in density, supporting habitats for numerous species. Grass-dominated regions supported grazing animals, while forested regions supported climbing and ground-dwelling organisms. Wetland systems continued to serve as breeding areas for aquatic and semi-aquatic life forms. Desert regions contained organisms adapted to low water availability and high temperature variation. Throughout this time, biological systems developed increased specialization. Organisms adapted to specific food sources, habitats, and environmental conditions. Some developed protective coverings, others developed speed or burrowing abilities, and others developed feeding structures suited for particular diets. These adaptations supported survival across changing environmental conditions. Ocean currents transported heat across marine regions, influencing temperature patterns and biological distribution. Coastal areas supported rich ecosystems with abundant nutrients and diverse organisms. Deep ocean zones contained organisms adapted to low light and high pressure conditions. Marine food chains developed multiple levels of feeding relationships across different species. Air and water interactions influenced climate cycles across long periods of time. Evaporation, condensation, and precipitation processes maintained water distribution across land and sea. Seasonal cycles influenced biological activity, including reproduction, migration, and growth patterns in plants and animals. Sediment layers accumulated over long periods in river basins and ocean floors. These layers contained organic material, mineral deposits, and remains of living organisms. Over extended time periods, these deposits formed structured geological records of environmental conditions and biological activity. Soil fertility in many regions depended on these accumulated materials. Ecological systems continued to develop through continuous interaction between living organisms and physical environments. Energy from sunlight supported plant growth, which supported herbivores, which supported predators and decomposers. Nutrient cycles moved through soil, water, and living systems, maintaining balance in many ecosystems across land and sea. The gradual development of Earth's living systems during this time involved continuous expansion of diversity in plants, animals, and microorganisms across many regions of the planet, with environmental conditions shaping distribution patterns, biological structures, and ecological relationships across land, water, and atmospheric systems. The mass extinction event that ended the dinosaurs happened about 66 million years ago. It marked a time when a very large number of living things on Earth stopped existing within a relatively short span of geological time. This event affected land, oceans, and the atmosphere. It changed the living world in many ways and removed many forms of life that had existed for millions of years before that time. Dinosaurs that lived on land were among the most well-known living groups affected, and many other animals and plants also disappeared during this time. Before this extinction event, Earth had a wide variety of living organisms. Large reptiles moved across land in many regions. Flying reptiles existed in the skies. Marine reptiles lived in oceans and seas. Many kinds of plants grew in different climates, including forests and open land areas. Small animals also lived in many environments, including early mammals, insects, and amphibians. Oceans contained many kinds of fish, shell organisms, and microscopic life that supported marine food systems. The event that led to the extinction began with a sudden impact on Earth from space. A large object from space reached Earth and struck the surface in a region that is now part of the Yucatan Peninsula in present-day Mexico. The object was a type of asteroid. When it entered Earth's atmosphere, it moved at extremely high speed and carried large energy. On impact, it released energy that affected the land, air, and oceans. The impact created shock waves that spread through the ground and atmosphere. It also released material from the ground into the air. The impact site formed a large crater, known today as the Chicxulub structure. The ground at the point of impact melted and broke apart. Rocks were thrown into the air and spread across wide areas. Some of this material returned to the surface and covered land and sea regions. The energy released during the impact caused fires in many locations. Heat generated during the event affected plants and animals close to the impact area and in distant regions. After the impact, dust and small particles entered the atmosphere in large amounts. These particles remained in the air for a long time. Sunlight reaching Earth's surface was reduced because the atmosphere contained large quantities of dust and smoke. The reduction of sunlight affected plant growth on land. Plants depend on sunlight for energy production through natural processes in their cells. When sunlight decreased, plant growth slowed and many plants could not survive for long periods. In oceans, small living organisms that depend on sunlight near the surface were also affected. These organisms form the base of marine food systems. When their numbers decreased, animals that depend on them for food were also affected. This disruption spread through marine environments and affected many levels of ocean life. Along with the impact event, volcanic activity was also occurring on Earth during this period. In a region that is now part of India, large volcanic eruptions released lava and gases over long periods of time. This region is known as the Deccan Traps. The volcanic eruptions released gases such as carbon dioxide and sulfur compounds into the atmosphere. These gases affected climate conditions and air composition. Carbon dioxide in the atmosphere contributed to changes in temperature patterns over time. Sulfur compounds could form particles that remained in the atmosphere and affected sunlight reaching the surface. These processes added stress to living organisms already affected by the impact event. The combination of reduced sunlight from dust and atmospheric changes from volcanic gases affected both land and ocean environments. On land, many plant groups experienced reduction in growth and reproduction. Forest areas were affected because tree growth depended on steady sunlight and stable climate conditions. When these conditions changed, plant survival became more difficult in many regions. Herbivorous animals that depended on plants for food experienced food shortages. Carnivorous animals that depended on herbivores for food were also affected. Dinosaurs that lived on land included many different forms with different sizes and feeding habits. Some fed on plants, while others fed on animals. When plant life decreased, plant-eating dinosaurs had less available food. This affected their ability to survive and reproduce. When plant-eating dinosaur populations decreased, meat-eating dinosaurs also experienced reduced food sources. Flying reptiles that lived in the skies also depended on available food sources such as small animals and fish. When these food sources decreased, flying reptiles also experienced population decline. Many species could not maintain stable populations during this period of environmental change. In oceans, temperature changes occurred due to atmospheric conditions and changes in sunlight reaching the water surface. Ocean chemistry also changed. Carbon dioxide absorbed into oceans affected water acidity levels. When water becomes more acidic, organisms that build shells or calcium-based structures experience difficulty forming and maintaining their structures. This affected many marine organisms. Marine plankton, which are very small organisms floating in ocean water, were affected by changes in sunlight and ocean chemistry. These organisms form an important part of marine food systems. When their numbers changed, animals that feed on them were also affected. This disruption spread through many levels of marine life, affecting fish, marine reptiles, and other ocean organisms. The extinction event did not occur instantly for all organisms at the same moment. Instead, it unfolded over a period of time after the initial impact. Some organisms experienced immediate effects from heat and shock. Others experienced longer-term effects due to changes in environment, climate, and food availability. Over time, population sizes of many species decreased until they could no longer continue existing. Small animals with flexible diets and living habits were more able to survive through these conditions. Some early mammals survived this period. These mammals were generally small in body size and lived in various environments, such as underground spaces, forest areas, and sheltered regions. Their ability to eat different types of food sources helped them survive when specific food types became limited. Reptiles that were not affected by the extinction also continued to exist, including some species that lived in aquatic environments and some that lived on land. Birds, which developed from earlier dinosaur groups, also survived and continued evolving after the extinction event. These surviving groups later expanded into many new forms over time. The atmosphere after the impact contained large amounts of dust and particles for an extended period. During this time, temperatures on Earth were affected. Sunlight reaching the surface was reduced. Plant growth remained limited in many regions. As dust slowly settled out of the atmosphere, sunlight gradually increased again. This allowed plant life to slowly begin recovering in some regions. Soil conditions were also affected by the event. Ash and dust settled on land surfaces and changed soil composition. In some areas, nutrients became available from volcanic material and dust deposits. Over time, plants began to grow in these soils again. The return of plant life supported the return of animal life in many ecosystems. In freshwater environments, such as rivers and lakes, organisms also experienced changes. Water systems received sediment and particles from the atmosphere and from disturbed land surfaces. These changes affected water clarity and oxygen levels. Aquatic organisms in these systems had to adapt to new conditions or decline in number. The extinction event affected many groups of organisms at different levels. Large land reptiles, flying reptiles, and many marine reptiles disappeared from Earth during this time. Many species of plants also disappeared. Microorganisms in oceans and soils were also affected, although some continued to exist and later increased in number. The fossil record shows that before this event, many layers of rock contain remains of dinosaurs and other ancient organisms. After this event, these remains are no longer found in younger rock layers. This change in fossil distribution shows the time period when many of these organisms stopped existing. Above this boundary in geological layers, new types of fossils appear, including those of mammals and birds that became more common after the extinction. Chemical evidence in rocks from this time period shows changes in elements present in soil layers. One important element found in higher amounts in certain layers is iridium, which is more common in space objects than in Earth's surface materials. This provides evidence supporting the arrival of material from space during the extinction event. Soot and carbon particles found in geological layers also indicate widespread burning during this time. These particles are found in rock layers that correspond to the time of the extinction event. They show that fire activity occurred on a large scale, affecting vegetation and organic material. Ocean sediment layers from this time period show changes in microfossils. Many species of microscopic marine organisms disappear from these layers, while new species appear in later layers. This change indicates a shift in ocean life after the extinction event. The extinction event also affected climate systems over a longer period after the initial impact. Temperature changes occurred as atmospheric particles gradually settled. Carbon dioxide levels influenced warming patterns after initial cooling periods. These changes continued to affect ecosystems during recovery periods. After the extinction event, ecosystems began to rebuild over long periods of time. Surviving plant species spread into available land areas. Surviving animal species increased in number and expanded into different environments. New ecological relationships formed as surviving organisms adapted to changed conditions. Mammals began to increase in diversity after the extinction event. Different groups of mammals developed new feeding habits, movement patterns, and habitats. Birds also expanded into many ecological roles. Reptiles that survived continued evolving in different directions depending on their environments. Marine ecosystems also began to recover. Plankton populations gradually returned, supporting the rebuilding of ocean food systems. Fish populations increased in diversity. Marine invertebrates, such as mollusks and crustaceans, also began to expand in number again. The extinction event represents a major change in Earth's biological history. It marked the end of many long-existing groups of organisms and the beginning of new patterns of life distribution. The processes involved included impact from space, volcanic activity, atmospheric changes, ocean chemistry changes, and disruption of food systems on land and in water. The effects of this event extended across many environments and influenced the structure of life on Earth for long periods afterward. After the mass extinction event that removed many forms of life from Earth, the planet entered a long period where living systems began to rebuild in stages across land, oceans, and air. The environments that remained were altered in many ways. With many living spaces left empty, and many ecological roles without organisms to fill them. Living things that survived faced conditions that were unstable, and these conditions shaped the way ecosystems started to form again. In the early period after the extinction, sunlight still reached Earth in the same daily cycle, but the amount of light available for plant growth was reduced in many regions due to dust and particles in the atmosphere. This affected photosynthetic organisms, especially those in shallow waters and on land surfaces. Plant growth in many areas started slowly, with simple forms becoming dominant in places where soil and water were available. Ferns became widespread in many regions because their spores could spread through air and settle in disturbed ground. These plants helped stabilize soil surfaces and provided early ground cover that supported the next stages of ecosystem rebuilding. Soil itself underwent changes during this time. Large areas that had been disturbed by heat, pressure waves, and falling debris from the extinction event experienced changes in nutrient content. Dead organic material accumulated in many places because decomposition processes were disrupted at first. Microorganisms that survived in soil and water began breaking down this material again, slowly restoring nutrient cycles. Bacteria played an important role in recycling carbon, nitrogen, and other elements necessary for plant growth. Fungi also expanded across many environments, forming networks in soil that helped break down dead plant material and distribute nutrients. In freshwater systems, early recovery involved algae and microbial mats forming on the surfaces of lakes and rivers. These simple organisms created the first stable food sources for small aquatic animals that survived the extinction. Water conditions varied widely depending on location, with some areas containing high levels of sediment and dissolved materials. Over time, clearer water systems began to support more complex communities of plankton, which formed the base of aquatic food systems. These planktonic organisms reproduced quickly and spread through currents, helping to rebuild energy flow in aquatic environments. Marine environments also began to recover through the return of plankton populations. Microscopic algae and other small photosynthetic organisms became abundant in surface waters where sunlight could reach. These organisms provided food for small marine animals that had survived in deep water or sheltered environments. The rebuilding of plankton communities allowed energy from sunlight to enter ocean food systems again, supporting a gradual increase in animal diversity in marine ecosystems. In shallow seas, areas of seabed that had been left empty started to be colonized by small invertebrate animals. Worms, mollusks, and other soft-bodied organisms became common in sediments. These organisms played a role in mixing the seafloor material, which helped oxygen enter deeper layers of sediment. This process allowed chemical conditions in marine soils to stabilize, supporting further growth of marine life. On land, animal life after the extinction began with small surviving groups of reptiles, early mammals, and amphibians. These animals occupied ecological roles that required low energy use and flexible diets. Many fed on insects, seeds, and decaying plant matter. The absence of large predators allowed these small animals to spread into many available habitats. Their reproduction rates supported gradual population increases in suitable environments. Insects played a central role in the recovery of terrestrial ecosystems. Many insect groups survived the extinction event and quickly expanded in number. They fed on plant material, fungi, and decaying organic matter. Pollination systems began to redevelop as flowering plants started to appear again in some regions. Insects that interacted with plants helped shape early plant reproduction systems, supporting the spread of new plant communities. The atmosphere during this period continued to adjust as dust and particles gradually settled. Sunlight became more stable at ground level, which supported more consistent plant growth. Temperature patterns varied across regions, with some areas experiencing periods of cooling due to reduced sunlight and others stabilizing as atmospheric conditions improved. These changes influenced where different organisms could survive and grow. In many terrestrial environments, early forests began to form again, although these forests were not structured in the same way across all regions. They consisted mainly of fast-growing plants that could reproduce quickly and spread through spores or seeds. These early plant communities created shaded environments that helped retain moisture in soil. Moist soil conditions supported fungi, small invertebrates, and early vertebrate animals. As plant life expanded, herbivorous animals began to find more stable food sources. Early mammals played an important role in this stage of recovery. These mammals were generally small in size and had varied diets. Some fed on insects, others on plant material, and some on both. Their activity patterns included movement through leaf litter and underground burrows, which helped mix soil layers and distribute organic material. Reptiles also continued to occupy many ecological roles. Some groups adapted to feeding on small animals and plant material. Amphibians remained important in freshwater environments, where they contributed to insect population control and served as both predators and prey in aquatic systems. The interaction between these groups created early food networks that supported energy flow through ecosystems. In coastal regions, mangrove-type plant systems began to form in some areas where conditions allowed. These environments provided shelter for juvenile marine animals and supported nutrient exchange between land and sea systems. Organic material from land was carried into coastal waters through rivers, supporting microbial and small animal communities in estuaries. As time continued, ecosystems developed greater complexity. Plant communities began to show more variation in structure, with different layers forming in some regions. Ground-level plants, shrubs and taller plants created multiple habitats for animals. This structural development allowed more animal species to occupy specific ecological roles. Feeding relationships became more varied as organisms specialized in different food sources. In freshwater lakes, fish populations began to diversify again. Small fish species fed on plankton and insects, while larger fish occupied higher positions in aquatic food networks. Oxygen levels in water bodies improved in many regions due to increased plant and algal activity. This supported more stable aquatic life cycles. Soil ecosystems continued to develop through the activity of decomposers. Worms, insects, fungi, and bacteria work together to break down dead organic matter and recycle nutrients. This process supported plant growth and maintained soil structure. Root systems of plants expanded through soil layers, increasing stability and improving water absorption. In some regions, volcanic activity influenced early ecosystem recovery. Volcanic ash provided mineral-rich material that altered soil composition. This created areas where plant growth was initially limited, but later supported strong regeneration once microbial communities established themselves. These regions contributed to ecological diversity across the planet. Airborne insect populations increased as plant communities expanded. Flying insects moved between plant groups, feeding on nectar, leaves, and other plant materials. Their movement also supported the spread of plant reproductive materials across distances. This allowed plant species to occupy new areas and establish new communities. Bird ancestors, which were small surviving dinosaur groups, also played a role in ecosystem recovery. These animals fed on insects and small animals and occupied various environments, including forests and coastal regions. Their presence added new layers to food networks and increased energy transfer across ecosystems. As ecosystems continued to rebuild, seasonal cycles began to influence biological activity more strongly. Plant growth patterns changed with variations in rainfall and temperature. Animal reproduction cycles also became linked to environmental changes, allowing populations to grow during favorable conditions and reduce activity during less stable periods. In many ecosystems, competition for resources increased as populations grew. This led to changes in feeding behavior, movement patterns, and habitat use. Some animals became specialized in certain food sources, while others remained general in their diets. These adaptations supported coexistence in shared environments. Microbial life remained essential throughout all stages of recovery. Bacteria and archaea processed chemical elements in soil and water, maintaining nutrient availability. In oxygen-poor environments, certain microorganisms used alternative chemical processes to survive, contributing to chemical balance in sediments and deep waters. Wetland environments expanded in many regions where water collected in low-lying areas. These wetlands supported high levels of plant growth and provided habitats for amphibians, insects, and small reptiles. Organic material accumulated in these environments, supporting decomposer activity and nutrient recycling. As plant diversity increased, some plants developed stronger structural features that allowed them to grow in varied environments. Root systems became more extensive in some species, allowing them to access deeper water sources. Leaf structures adapted to different light conditions, supporting growth in both open and shaded areas. In marine environments, coral-like organisms and reef-building communities began to recover in some regions. These structures provided habitats for many marine animals, including small fish and invertebrates. Reef systems contributed to nutrient cycling in coastal waters and supported biological diversity. Sediment layers in both marine and terrestrial environments recorded the gradual changes in ecosystem recovery. Layers of organic material, mineral deposits, and biological remains showed the progression of life returning to different regions. These layers also influenced soil structure and water filtration in ecosystems. Over time, ecological networks became more stable as more organisms occupied different roles in energy flow systems. Producers, consumers, and decomposers interacted in continuous cycles that supported ecosystem maintenance. Energy from sunlight moved through plants into animals and decomposers, maintaining biological activity across environments. In some regions, isolated habitats allowed unique forms of life to develop distinct characteristics. Geographic separation influenced how species used available resources and how they interacted with other organisms. These differences contributed to regional variation in ecosystems. As plant life continued to expand, oxygen levels in the atmosphere became more stable due to photosynthetic activity. This supported increased activity in animal life, especially in terrestrial environments. Animals with higher energy needs became more active in searching for food and shelter. In river systems, flowing water carried nutrients and organisms across landscapes. Riverbanks supported dense plant growth which stabilized soil and provided habitats for many species. Aquatic insects, fish, amphibians, and small reptiles interacted in these systems, forming interconnected food networks. Forest environments gradually developed more complex structures in some regions, with multiple layers of plant life supporting diverse animal communities. Leaf litter accumulated on forest floors, providing material for decomposers and small invertebrates. This supported continuous nutrient recycling within forest systems. Throughout all environments, the recovery of ecosystems depended on the interaction between living organisms and their physical surroundings. Rocks, soil, water, air, and sunlight formed the foundation for biological activity. Living systems adapted to available conditions and gradually expanded their presence across Earth's surface. In ocean depths, organisms that survived in low-energy environments continued to maintain slow but stable life processes. These deep environments provided refuge during unstable surface conditions and later contributed to recolonization of shallower waters. Chemical processes in deep-sea vents supported unique microbial communities that formed part of global nutrient cycles. As ecosystems continued to develop, the distribution of species across the planet became more varied. Some regions supported dense biological communities, while others maintained simpler ecosystems. These patterns reflected differences in climate, water availability, and soil composition. Animal behavior also became more complex as ecosystems stabilized. Feeding strategies included hunting, scavenging, grazing, and filter feeding. Movement patterns included migration in some species and localized living in others. These behaviors allowed organisms to use available resources efficiently. Plant reproduction systems expanded through wind, water, and animal interaction. Seeds and spores moved across environments, allowing plants to colonize new areas. This spread of plant life supported further expansion of animal communities. In many environments, the interaction between land and water systems became increasingly important. Rivers carried nutrients into oceans, while coastal waters supported exchange between marine and terrestrial ecosystems. These connections supported biological continuity across different habitats. As biological communities continued to expand, ecosystems developed layers of interaction that included microbial processes, plant growth, animal feeding, and decomposition cycles. These layers operated continuously, maintaining the flow of energy and matter throughout the planet's living systems. The early recovery of ecosystems after the extinction event involved gradual rebuilding of biological networks across all environments on Earth, with living organisms adapting to available conditions and establishing new ecological structures that supported ongoing biological activity across land, water, and atmospheric systems. After the extinction event that removed many large land reptiles and changed the structure of life on Earth, mammals began a long process of spreading into many land environments and developing new ways of living. This process unfolded across a very long span of time measured in tens of millions of years. It involved gradual changes in body size, feeding habits, movement, reproduction, and behavior. Mammals existed before this time, but they were mostly small and lived in limited roles within ecosystems. After the extinction event, many ecological spaces on land became open, and mammals began to occupy these spaces in many different forms. At the beginning of this long period, early mammals were still closely related to earlier mammal-like ancestors. Their bodies were generally small, and many of them lived in hidden places such as underground burrows, dense plants, and nighttime environments. Their small size helped them survive in conditions where larger animals would have needed more food. These mammals already had key features such as hair and the ability to produce milk for their young. These features supported warmth and feeding of offspring during early life stages. As time passed, the Earth entered a long phase where land environments continued to change. Forests expanded in many regions and plant life became more varied. flowering plants appeared and spread across land areas, bringing new types of food sources such as fruits, seeds, leaves, and nectar. Mammals began to adjust their feeding habits to make use of these plant materials. Some groups developed teeth that could cut leaves, while others developed teeth that could crush seeds or grind plant matter. These changes allowed mammals to live in more types of environments and use more types of food. At the same time, insect life also became more diverse. Many mammals began to feed on insects as part of their diet. Some mammals developed long snouts and sticky tongues to reach insects in narrow spaces. Others used sharp teeth to catch and break insect bodies. These feeding methods supported survival in environments where plant food was seasonal or limited. During this long span of time, mammal bodies also changed in size and shape. Some mammals remained small and continued living in hidden or sheltered places. Others began to grow larger as food resources became more available. Larger body size allowed some mammals to move across wider land areas and use different food sources. These changes happened gradually through many generations. Reproductive patterns in mammals also played an important role in their development. Mammals give birth to live young in most cases, and the young often depend on milk for early nourishment. This allowed young mammals to develop in a protected environment before becoming active in the outside world. This form of reproduction supported survival in many land environments, especially where conditions changed during different seasons. As mammals spread into many regions, they began to occupy a wide range of land environments. Some lived in dense forests, where they moved among trees and plants. Others lived in open land areas, where they moved across wide ground spaces. Some mammals adapted to living near water sources, such as rivers and lakes, where they fed on plants, insects, and small aquatic animals. Each environment shaped the development of different mammal groups in different ways. The structure of mammal limbs also changed over time. Early mammals had simple limb structures that supported basic movement. As time passed, some mammals developed stronger limbs for running, while others developed limbs for climbing or digging. These changes were related to how they moved through their environments and how they searched for food or avoided danger. Mammals that lived in trees developed flexible joints and gripping feet. Mammals that lived underground developed strong claws and compact bodies for digging soil. The senses of mammals also developed further during this long period. Many mammals developed strong hearing abilities, allowing them to detect sounds from long distances or in low light conditions. Some mammals developed a strong sense of smell, which helped them locate food and detect other animals in their surroundings. Vision also developed in different ways depending on the environment. Mammals living in low light areas developed eyes that could detect small amounts of light, while those in open areas developed vision suited for wide viewing distances. Social behavior began to appear in some mammal groups. Certain mammals started to live in small groups where they could share protection and find food more effectively. Group living allowed communication through sounds, body movements, and scent markings. These forms of communication helped mammals coordinate movement and recognize members of their group. Not all mammals lived in groups, as many continued to live alone, depending on their environment and feeding habits. As the long period continued, mammals began to spread into more varied climates. Some regions experienced warm conditions for long periods, while others experienced cooler conditions. Mammals adapted to these changes through body covering, behavior, and food selection. Hair became important for maintaining body temperature in cooler regions. Some mammals developed thicker layers of hair, while others developed seasonal changes in hair density. feeding strategies became even more diverse. Some mammals became plant eaters that focused on leaves, stems and roots. Others focused on seeds and fruits. Some mammals became meat eaters that hunted or scavenged other animals. These different feeding strategies allowed mammals to occupy many ecological roles. Teeth structure continued to change in response to diet. Sharp teeth developed for cutting flesh, while flat teeth developed for grinding plant material. In many regions, mammals began to move into open land environments that had wide spaces with limited tree cover. Movement across these areas required endurance and speed. Some mammals developed long legs and strong muscles for sustained movement. Others used stealth and hiding strategies to survive in these open areas. These adaptations allowed mammals to live in places that required different movement abilities. Water environments also became important for some mammal groups. Certain mammals developed the ability to swim and spend time in rivers, lakes, and coastal areas. Their bodies changed in ways that supported movement in water, including changes in limb shape and body structure. These mammals fed on fish, aquatic plants, and other water-based resources. Burrowing behavior remained important for many mammals. Underground spaces provided protection from environmental changes and from other animals. Some mammals spent most of their lives underground, coming to the surface mainly to feed. These mammals developed strong digging limbs and body shapes that allowed them to move through soil efficiently. Over a long period of time, the diversity of mammals increased significantly. Many distinct groups appeared, each with its own way of living. These groups included small insect-eating mammals, plant-eating mammals of different sizes, and larger mammals with varied diets. Each group developed features suited to its way of life. The development of mammal brains also continued. Mammals generally developed larger brain sizes relative to body size, which supported learning and memory. This allowed them to adapt to changing environments and learn from experience. Some mammals were able to remember locations of food sources, migration routes, and shelter areas. Parental care remained an important part of mammal life. Adult mammals often protected and fed their young for extended periods. This allowed young mammals to learn survival skills before becoming independent. Different species developed different levels of care, but the general pattern of nurturing young remained consistent across mammals. As land environments continued to change over long spans of time, mammals kept adapting in many directions. Some groups became highly specialized in their diets and movement patterns. Others remained flexible and used a wide range of food sources. These adaptations allowed mammals to exist in many different ecological settings. Seasonal changes in environments also influenced mammal behavior. Some mammals stored food during certain times of the year. Others changed their activity levels depending on temperature and food availability. Some mammals reduced their activity during unfavorable conditions and became more active when conditions improved. Communication among mammals became more developed in many groups. Sounds such as calls, clicks, and other vocal signals were used to communicate danger, food presence, and social interactions. Scent marking also became an important method of communication in many land environments. As mammals continued to spread across land areas, they occupied roles in many ecosystems. They interacted with plants, insects, and other animals in many ways. Their feeding activities influenced plant distribution, and their movement patterns influenced soil and vegetation structure. These interactions shaped land environments in many regions. Body size diversity among mammals expanded widely. Some mammals remained very small and lived in hidden environments. Others grew much larger and moved across large land areas. These size differences allowed mammals to use different food sources and occupy different ecological roles. The development of mammal teeth continued to show strong adaptation to diet. Some mammals developed teeth that grew continuously throughout life, allowing them to handle constant wear from feeding. Others developed specialized teeth patterns for precise cutting or grinding. Respiratory and circulatory systems in mammals supported active lifestyles. Efficient oxygen use allowed many mammals to maintain steady movement and activity levels. This supported feeding, migration, and survival in changing environments. As time progressed further, mammals continued to spread into nearly all available land environments. They adapted to forests, open plains, underground systems, riverbanks, and coastal regions. Each environment shaped their body structures and behaviors in different ways. The long development of mammals on land involved continuous change in many biological features. These changes occurred through many generations and across many regions of the Earth. Mammals developed a wide range of forms, behaviors, and ecological roles as they moved through different environments and adjusted to changing conditions across long periods of natural history. The spread of mammals across land areas continued through many stages of environmental change. Plant life continued to diversify, creating new sources of food and shelter. Mammals responded to these changes by adjusting feeding methods and movement patterns. Some mammals developed preferences for specific plant parts, while others maintained varied diets that included multiple food sources. These dietary patterns influenced tooth shape, jaw strength, and digestive processes. Digestive systems in mammals adapted to different types of food intake. Plant-eating mammals developed longer digestive tracts to process fibrous plant material. Meat-eating mammals developed shorter digestive tracts suited for processing protein-rich food. Some mammals developed systems that allowed them to process both plant and animal food, giving them flexibility in feeding behavior. Nervous systems in mammals supported increasing levels of coordination and sensory response. Movement became more controlled and precise in many groups. This allowed mammals to navigate complex environments, such as dense forests and uneven land surfaces. Reaction to environmental signals improved, supporting survival in changing conditions. Many mammals developed nocturnal activity patterns, remaining active during low light conditions. This behavior allowed them to reduce exposure to environmental stress and to access food sources that were less competed for. Other mammals remained active during daylight hours, depending on their feeding habits and predator avoidance strategies. Burrowing mammals continued to expand their presence in underground environments. Soil conditions in different regions supported different types of burrow systems. Some mammals created simple tunnels, while others developed complex underground networks. These systems provided shelter, storage, and breeding areas. Climbing mammals expanded their presence in forested environments. Trees provided access to food sources such as fruits, leaves, and insects. Mammals that lived in trees developed flexible limbs, strong grip ability, and balance control. These adaptations supported movement across branches and vertical surfaces. In open land environments, mammals developed endurance-based movement patterns. Long-distance movement allowed access to scattered food resources. Some mammals traveled across wide areas in search of food and water. These movement patterns were supported by limb strength and energy use efficiency. Water-adapted mammals continued to develop features that supported swimming and diving. Limb structures changed to assist movement through water. Body shapes became suited for reducing resistance during swimming. These mammals accessed food sources in aquatic environments and along shorelines. Reproductive cycles in mammals adapted to environmental conditions. Timing of birth became linked to seasonal availability of food and shelter. This ensured that young mammals had access to resources during early development stages. Gestation periods varied across different groups depending on body size and environmental conditions. Growth rates in mammals varied widely. Some mammals reached independence quickly, while others required extended parental care. Extended care allowed young mammals to develop survival skills gradually. This influenced survival rates in different environments. As mammals continued to spread and diversify, their presence became established across many land regions. Each group continued to develop features suited to its environment and lifestyle. These ongoing changes supported the expansion of mammal populations into many ecological roles across the land surface, continuing through extended periods of Earth history without reaching a final point of change. Paleogene period refers to a long span of geological time that began after a major global extinction event that removed many groups of living organisms from land and sea. It lasted for many millions of years and involved continuous changes in climate, land surfaces, oceans, and living communities. During this time, Earth experienced ongoing shifts in temperature, rainfall patterns, sea levels, and atmospheric conditions, and these shifts influenced how plants, animals, and microorganisms lived and spread across different regions. At the start of the Paleogene period, the surface of Earth carried many signs of large environmental disturbance. Large areas of land were open and exposed, and many ecosystems had been disrupted. Soil development was uneven in many regions, and vegetation cover was not uniform. In several places, early plant growth began on bare ground, and this growth slowly expanded into more stable plant communities. The air composition included gases that supported plant photosynthesis, and carbon dioxide levels were higher in many intervals of the early Paleogene. Oxygen levels remained suitable for animal life, allowing many groups to survive and expand. Oceans during the early Paleogene held large amounts of dissolved nutrients that had been released through erosion of land surfaces and volcanic activity. These nutrients supported growth of microscopic organisms such as plankton. Plankton formed the base of marine food systems, and their populations changed in response to temperature and chemical conditions in seawater. Ocean temperatures in many regions were warm, and this warmth influenced circulation patterns. Warm water moved across broad areas, and this movement affected the distribution of marine life. On land, plant life began to spread across different environments. Early Paleogene vegetation included ferns, conifers, and early forms of flowering plants. Flowering plants had already appeared earlier in Earth history, but during the Paleogene they expanded into many new regions. Seeds were dispersed by wind, water, and animals, allowing plants to reach new areas. Forests began to form in many parts of the world where moisture was available. In drier regions, plant cover remained sparse, and open landscapes were present. Animal life on land changed in structure and distribution during the Paleogene. Mammals began to occupy many ecological roles that had previously been occupied by other groups in earlier time periods. Early mammals during this period included small insect-eating forms, plant-eating forms, and carnivorous forms. Body sizes varied widely among different mammal groups. Some mammals lived in forested areas, while others lived in open environments. Birds also diversified during this time, with many forms adapting to different feeding habits and habitats. Reptiles remained present in many regions, including snakes, lizards, turtles, and crocodile-like animals. The surface of Earth during the Paleogene was influenced by movements of large rock plates beneath the crust. These movements caused changes in the positions of continents. Land masses shifted gradually, and this movement affected ocean pathways and climate conditions. Mountain formation occurred in some regions due to collisions and pressure between moving plates. These processes created elevated land areas that influenced rainfall patterns and river systems. Rivers carried sediment from high regions toward low-lying basins, gradually filling them over long periods of time. Climate conditions during the Paleogene changed over time. Early parts of the period included warm conditions in many regions, with limited presence of ice in polar areas. Rainfall patterns supported the development of forests in regions that today contain different types of environments. As time continued, temperature patterns shifted in different directions in various intervals. Some regions experienced cooling phases, and these changes influenced plant distribution and animal movement. Atmospheric circulation patterns also changed, affecting how heat and moisture were transported across the planet. In land environments, soil formation continued through the breakdown of rock and accumulation of organic material. Microorganisms played an important role in breaking down plant matter, returning nutrients to the soil. These nutrients supported new plant growth, creating continuous cycles of plant production and decomposition. Wetlands formed in areas where water collected for long periods. These wetlands supported specialized plant communities and provided habitats for many small animals and insects. In freshwater systems such as lakes and rivers, water flow patterns changed due to rainfall variations and geological movement. Sediment transport influenced the shape and depth of river channels. Lakes accumulated layers of sediment that preserved remains of plants and animals. Aquatic organisms adapted to different water temperatures and nutrient levels. Fish populations changed in structure, with different groups occupying different types of freshwater environments. Marine environments during the Paleogene included shallow seas and deep ocean regions. In shallow seas, sunlight reached the seafloor, allowing growth of algae and other photosynthetic organisms. Coral communities developed in warm waters, forming structures that supported many marine species. In deeper ocean regions, organisms adapted to lower light conditions and higher pressure. Microscopic organisms played a major role in ocean ecosystems, forming the base of food chains that supported larger animals. Atmospheric conditions during the Paleogene influenced weather systems. Air circulation moved heat from equatorial regions toward higher latitudes. Moisture in the atmosphere condensed into clouds and returned to the surface as precipitation. Rainfall patterns varied across regions and time periods, affecting the distribution of forests, grasslands, and dry areas. Wind patterns also influenced the movement of seeds, spores, and small organisms, assisting in the spread of life across continents. Volcanic activity occurred in several regions during the Paleogene. Eruptions released gases and ash into the atmosphere. These materials influenced air composition and sometimes affected sunlight reaching the surface. Lava flows reshaped local landscapes, creating new rock formations that later became sites for soil development and plant colonization. Volcanic regions often contained fertile soils after weathering processes occurred over time. Insects during the Paleogene played important roles in ecosystems. Many insects fed on plant material, nectar, and other organic matter. Some insects assisted in the transfer of pollen between plants, supporting reproduction of flowering plants. Insect populations adapted to different environmental conditions, including humid forests and drier, open areas. The diversity of insect forms increased in many regions due to the availability of plant resources. Small vertebrate animals occupied many ecological niches during the Paleogene. These included early rodents, primates, and other mammal groups that lived in trees, on the ground or near water sources. Their feeding habits included consumption of seeds, fruits, insects, and small animals. Movement patterns of these animals influenced seed dispersal and soil disturbance, contributing to changes in vegetation patterns over time. Large-scale environmental changes during the Paleogene influenced how ecosystems developed. Temperature shifts affected the distribution of forests and open vegetation. Rainfall changes influenced river systems and wetland areas. Geological activity influenced land elevation and the formation of basins. These factors interacted continuously, creating a wide range of environmental conditions across different regions of Earth. In some regions, long periods of stable environmental conditions allowed the development of dense plant growth. These areas supported large numbers of animals that depended on vegetation for food and shelter. In other regions, environmental conditions changed frequently, leading to shifts in plant types and animal communities. Organisms adapted through changes in feeding behavior, reproduction patterns, and movement across landscapes. Ocean chemistry during the Paleogene was influenced by temperature and input of minerals from land. Carbon and calcium levels in seawater affected the formation of shells in marine organisms. Many marine organisms built shells from calcium carbonate, and these shells accumulated on the ocean floor after death. Over long periods, these deposits formed layers of sediment. The movement of continents during the Paleogene also affected ocean currents. Ocean currents transported heat and nutrients across large distances. These currents influenced climate conditions in coastal regions and affected marine ecosystems. Changes in ocean pathways created new environmental conditions for marine life, leading to shifts in species distribution. Plant communities during the Paleogene included a wide range of forms. Forests contained tall trees, shrubs, and ground-level plants. Leaf shapes and structures varied depending on environmental conditions such as rainfall and temperature. Some plants developed adaptations for dry conditions, including reduced leaf size and thicker protective surfaces. Other plants developed features suited for moist environments, including broad leaves and high rates of water movement. Seed dispersal mechanisms played an important role in plant distribution. Wind carried lightweight seeds across open areas. Water transported seeds along river systems and coastal regions. Animals contributed to seed movement by carrying them externally or internally. These processes allowed plant communities to expand into new areas over time. Microorganisms in soil and water environments supported nutrient cycling. Bacteria and fungi broke down organic matter, releasing nutrients such as nitrogen and phosphorus back into the environment. These nutrients were absorbed by plants and entered food systems. Microbial activity influenced soil structure and fertility, supporting plant growth in many regions. During the Paleogene, environmental changes also influenced evolutionary processes in many groups of organisms. Populations of animals and plants responded to changes in temperature, rainfall, and habitat structure. Genetic variation within populations allowed different traits to become more common in different environments. Over long periods, this led to the appearance of new forms adapted to specific conditions. River systems during the Paleogene transported large amounts of sediment from upland areas to low-lying basins and coastal regions. These sediments included sand, silt, and clay particles. Deposits accumulated in layers, forming geological records of environmental conditions. Changes in river direction and flow rate influenced the distribution of sediments across landscapes. Wetland areas provided environments with high moisture levels. These regions supported dense plant growth and diverse animal communities. Water levels in wetlands changed due to rainfall variation and geological movement. Some wetlands remained stable for long periods, allowing accumulation of organic material in soil layers. In many regions, forest environments developed complex structures with multiple layers of vegetation. Tree canopies created shaded areas beneath them, where smaller plants grew. Forest floors contained decomposing plant material and supported insects, worms, and other small organisms. Animal movement within forests influenced nutrient distribution and seed dispersal. Marine plankton communities changed throughout the Paleogene in response to temperature and nutrient availability. These microscopic organisms included both plant-like and animal-like forms. Plankton formed the base of ocean food systems and supported larger marine organisms. Changes in plankton populations influenced marine food availability across different ocean regions. Atmospheric gases during the Paleogene included carbon dioxide, oxygen, nitrogen, and small amounts of other gases. Carbon dioxide levels influenced plant growth rates and global temperature patterns. Oxygen supported animal respiration and energy production. Changes in gas levels occurred through volcanic activity, plant growth and chemical reactions in oceans and soils. Ice presence in polar regions changed during different parts of the Paleogene. Early parts of the period included limited ice coverage in these regions. Later intervals included development of ice in some polar areas due to cooling conditions. These changes influenced sea levels and ocean circulation patterns. Coastal environments during the Paleogene included estuaries, deltas, and shallow marine zones. Rivers carried sediment into coastal regions, forming delta systems. These environments supported both marine and freshwater organisms. Changes in sea level influenced the extent of coastal areas and the distribution of habitats. Soil development continued across land surfaces, through weathering of rock and accumulation of organic matter. Different soil types formed depending on climate, vegetation, and rock composition. Soil structure influenced water retention and plant growth. Organisms living in soil contributed to mixing and nutrient cycling. Animal communities during the Paleogene included many feeding strategies. Herbivorous animals consumed leaves, fruits, seeds, and stems. Carnivorous animals fed on other animals. Omnivorous animals consumed both plant and animal material. Feeding behavior influenced interactions between species and affected population structures. The Paleogene period contained continuous environmental change across land, sea, and atmosphere. These changes affected living organisms, geological structures, and chemical systems. Environmental conditions shifted across different regions and time intervals, influencing the distribution and development of ecosystems. The evolution and spread of primates during the Paleogene was one of the most important developments in the history of mammals. This long period began shortly after the extinction event that ended the age of non-avian dinosaurs and lasted from about 66 million years ago until about 23 million years ago. During this time, Earth experienced major environmental changes, including shifts in climate, the movement of continents, the growth of forests, and changes in animal communities. These conditions created opportunities for many mammal groups to diversify and spread into new habitats. Among these mammals were the early ancestors of modern primates. The story of primate evolution during the Paleogene begins in a world that was recovering from a massive extinction. When many large reptile groups disappeared, numerous ecological spaces became available. Mammals that had previously occupied relatively small roles in ecosystems began to expand into a wide variety of forms. Some adapted to life on the ground, while others moved into trees. The ancestors of primates became especially successful in forest environments, where climbing abilities, flexible limbs, grasping hands, and improved vision offered important advantages. The earliest animals closely related to primates appeared very soon after the extinction event. These animals are often called Plesiadapiforms. They lived during the Paleocene epoch, the first epoch of the Paleogene. Although scientists continue to study exactly how closely they were related to modern primates, many researchers consider them to be near the base of the primate family tree. They shared several features with later primates, although they also possessed many characteristics that differed from living monkeys, apes, and humans. Plesiadapiforms were generally small animals. Many were about the size of squirrels or small rodents. Their teeth suggest that different species consumed different foods. Some ate fruits, seeds, leaves, flowers, or insects. Their diverse diets helped them occupy various ecological roles within forest environments. Fossils of these animals have been discovered in parts of North America, Europe, and Asia, showing that they spread across large regions of the Northern Hemisphere. During the Paleocene, much of the world experienced warm temperatures. Forests extended across vast areas, including regions that are much colder today. These forests provided abundant food and shelter for small tree-dwelling mammals. Dense vegetation created environments where climbing skills became increasingly valuable. Animals capable of moving efficiently among branches could reach food sources, avoid predators, and find safe places to rest. As primate ancestors adapted to life in trees, several important evolutionary changes began to develop. Hands and feet became more effective at grasping branches. Flexible joints allowed greater freedom of movement. Claws gradually gave way to flattened nails in some lineages. Eyes shifted toward the front of the face, allowing greater overlap between visual fields. This improvement increased depth perception, helping animals judge distances while moving through complex forest canopies. The Paleocene was followed by the Eocene epoch, which began about 56 million years ago. The Eocene was a particularly important period for primate evolution because it witnessed the appearance of animals that were much more clearly recognizable as true primates. By this time, primates had already diversified into several groups that showed many features associated with modern species. The beginning of the Eocene was marked by a period of exceptional warmth known as the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum. During this interval, global temperatures rose significantly. Forests expanded even farther across the continents, creating extensive habitats suitable for arboreal mammals. Warm conditions allowed tropical and subtropical vegetation to spread into regions that are now temperate. These environmental changes likely contributed to the rapid spread and diversification of early primates. Among the earliest true primates were groups known as Adapiforms and Omomyiforms. These animals appeared in North America, Europe, Asia, and later Africa. They displayed many characteristics that distinguish primates from other mammals. Their hands and feet were adapted for grasping. Their eyes faced forward. Their brains were relatively larger than those of many earlier mammals. Their limbs allowed agile movement through trees. Adapiforms were generally more robust animals. Many species possessed long snouts and strong jaws. Their teeth suggest that fruits and leaves formed important parts of their diets. Some species resembled modern lemurs in certain aspects of their appearance and behavior, although they were not direct ancestors of today's lemurs. Fossil discoveries indicate that adapiforms became widespread across multiple continents during the Eocene. Omomyiforms were often smaller and possessed larger eye sockets. Some scientists believe that these animals may have been active during the night. Their large eyes would have been useful for gathering light in dark forest environments. Omomyiforms ate a variety of foods, including insects and fruits. Their skeletal features suggest that many were agile climbers capable of rapid movement among branches. The spread of these early primates was aided by the geographic conditions of the Paleogene world. Continents occupied different positions than they do today. Land connections sometimes allowed animals to move between regions that are now separated. Warm climates reduced environmental barriers that might otherwise have limited dispersal. Forest habitats extended across broad areas, creating continuous pathways for tree-dwelling animals. North America played an important role in early primate evolution. Fossils from the Eocene reveal a rich diversity of primate species living in forests across the continent. These animals occupied a range of ecological niches. Some specialized in eating insects, while others focused on fruits or leaves. Their presence demonstrates that primates were once far more widespread in North America than they are today. Europe also contained abundant primate populations during the Eocene. Warm conditions supported lush forests across much of the continent. Fossils discovered in countries such as France, Germany, England and Spain provide valuable information about early primate diversity. These fossils reveal numerous species belonging to both adapiform and omomyiform groups. Asia served as another major center for primate evolution. Fossil evidence indicates that primates occupied many parts of the continent during the Paleogene. Some discoveries suggest that important evolutionary events may have occurred there. Asia's vast landscapes and diverse environments created opportunities for population expansion, adaptation, and speciation. Africa became increasingly significant as primate evolution progressed. During the Eocene, primates reached parts of Africa where they found favorable conditions in tropical forests. The continent would later become the center of major developments in anthropoid evolution, leading eventually to monkeys, apes, and humans. One of the most important developments during the Paleogene was the emergence of anthropoids. Anthropoids include monkeys, apes, and humans. Their earliest ancestors appeared during the Eocene and became more diverse during the Oligocene. These animals possessed characteristics that distinguished them from more primitive primates. Anthropoids generally had larger brains relative to body size. Their faces became shorter. Their eyes were positioned in ways that enhanced visual capabilities. Their dental structures showed changes associated with different diets. These adaptations contributed to increased behavioral complexity and greater flexibility in responding to environmental challenges. Some of the earliest anthropoids are known from fossil discoveries in Asia. Species such as eosimiids provide valuable insights into the origins of the anthropoid lineage. These small animals lived in trees and possessed a combination of primitive and advanced characteristics. Their fossils suggest that the roots of anthropoid evolution may extend deep into the Eocene. As anthropoids diversified, some populations spread into Africa. Fossil evidence indicates that these migrations occurred during the Paleogene, although scientists continue to investigate the exact routes and timing. The movement of primates between continents may have involved island chains, temporary land connections, or other geographic pathways that existed under Paleogene conditions. African fossil sites have yielded remarkable discoveries that illuminate the evolution of anthropoids. Several species from the late Eocene and Oligocene demonstrate increasing complexity in anatomy and behavior. These fossils reveal gradual changes in skull structure, dentition, and body proportions. The Oligocene epoch began about 34 million years ago. It brought significant environmental changes that influenced primate evolution. Global temperatures became cooler than during much of the Eocene. Forests contracted in some regions, while more open habitats expanded. These shifts affected the distribution and diversity of many animal groups, including primates. Cooling climates led to the disappearance of numerous primate populations in North America and Europe. As forests retreated, habitats suitable for many tree-dwelling species became less extensive. Some primates were unable to adapt to changing conditions and became extinct. Others survived in regions where forests remained abundant. Africa retained extensive tropical and subtropical forests during much of the Oligocene. These environments supported diverse primate communities and allowed anthropoids to continue evolving. Fossil discoveries from Egypt have provided particularly important information about this period. Ancient deposits in the Fayum region contain remains of several anthropoid species that help scientists understand the early history of monkeys and apes. Among these Oligocene primates were species such as Egyptopithecus. This animal possessed characteristics that place it near the ancestry of later Old World monkeys and apes. It lived in forested habitats and likely fed on fruits and other plant materials. Its anatomy reveals an important stage in primate evolution, showing features that would become more pronounced in later lineages. The evolution of vision was one of the defining aspects of primate development during the Paleogene. Forward-facing eyes improved depth perception, which was essential for navigating branches and locating food. Over time, visual processing became increasingly important within the primate brain. This trend contributed to the enlargement of certain brain regions involved in interpreting visual information. Brain development represented another major evolutionary trend. Early primates generally possessed larger brains relative to body size than many other mammals. This increase supported enhanced sensory processing, memory, coordination, and behavioral flexibility. As different primate groups evolved, brain organization became increasingly sophisticated. The evolution of hands and feet also played a critical role. Grasping structures allowed primates to hold branches securely while moving through trees. Opposable digits improved their ability to manipulate objects and obtain food. These adaptations increased efficiency in complex forest environments and opened opportunities for new behaviors. Dietary flexibility contributed significantly to primate success. Many Paleogene primates consumed fruits, insects, leaves, flowers, and seeds. Different species specialized in different combinations of foods. This diversity reduced direct competition and allowed multiple primate species to coexist within the same forests. Fruit consumption may have influenced several important evolutionary developments. Locating ripe fruit often required good vision, memory, and spatial awareness. Animals needed to remember the locations of food sources and recognize visual cues associated with ripeness. Such challenges may have encouraged the evolution of advanced sensory and cognitive abilities. Social behavior also began to develop in increasingly complex ways. Although direct evidence from fossils is limited, studies of anatomy and comparisons with living primates suggest that many Paleogene species likely interacted with others of their own kind. Social living can provide advantages related to protection, reproduction, and resource acquisition. The foundations of later primate social systems may have been established during this time. Reproductive strategies contributed to primate success as well. Primates generally produce fewer offspring than many small mammals, but invest more parental care in each young individual. Extended periods of development allow learning and behavioral flexibility. While the exact details varied among species, these patterns likely began emerging during the Paleogene. The spread of primates was closely linked to the movement of forests across the globe. Whenever warm conditions expanded forest habitats, opportunities for dispersal increased. Continuous tree cover enabled populations to move into new territories. Geographic expansion often led to isolation of certain groups, promoting the formation of new species. Climate fluctuations repeatedly influenced primate distributions. Periods of warming allowed forests to spread, while cooling episodes restricted suitable habitats. These changes created cycles of expansion, migration, adaptation, and extinction. The fossil record preserves evidence of these dynamic processes across many regions. Predation also shaped primate evolution. Early primates faced threats from birds, reptiles, and mammalian carnivores. Living in trees offered some protection, but predators remained significant pressures. Traits such as agility, alertness, depth perception, and social behavior may have been favored because they improved survival. Competition with other mammals influenced evolutionary pathways as well. Forest ecosystems contain numerous animal groups seeking similar resources. Primates that developed specialized diets, improved locomotion, or enhanced sensory abilities could exploit opportunities more effectively. Natural selection favored traits that increased reproductive success under local conditions. The fossil record of Paleogene primates continues to expand as new discoveries are made. Each fossil provides information about anatomy, behavior, ecology, and evolutionary relationships. Advances in dating techniques, imaging technology, and comparative analysis allow researchers to reconstruct ancient primate histories with increasing detail. Teeth are among the most informative fossils because they preserve well and contain valuable clues about diet and evolutionary relationships. Differences in tooth shape, size, and wear patterns help scientists identify species and infer feeding habits. Much of what is known about early primate diversity comes from dental evidence. Skull fossils provide insights into brain size, vision, hearing, and facial structure. Limb bones reveal information about movement and habitat use. Together, these remains allow researchers to reconstruct the lifestyles of animals that lived tens of millions of years ago. The Paleogene witnessed the transformation of primates from relatively small and primitive forms into increasingly specialized and diverse groups. By the end of the Oligocene, many of the key foundations of later primate evolution had already been established. Anthropoids were becoming more prominent, while earlier lineages had either adapted, declined, or disappeared. The distribution of primates at the close of the Paleogene differed greatly from that of earlier epochs. North America and Europe no longer supported the rich primate faunas that had existed during the Eocene. Cooling climates and environmental changes reduced suitable habitats. Africa and parts of Asia emerged as the principal centers of primate diversity and evolution. These surviving populations would continue evolving during the Neogene period. New groups of monkeys would appear and spread. Apes would diversify across parts of Africa, Europe, and Asia. Later developments within African ape lineages would eventually lead to the emergence of hominins and much later humans. Throughout the Paleogene, primates responded to changing climates, shifting landscapes, evolving ecosystems, and new ecological opportunities. Their history during this period involved migration across continents, adaptation to forest environments, diversification into numerous forms, and the gradual appearance of characteristics associated with modern monkeys, apes, and humans. Fossils from North America, Europe, Asia, and Africa reveal a complex pattern of expansion, specialization, extinction, and survival that shaped the early evolutionary history of one of the most distinctive mammalian groups on Earth. The Neogene period was a long chapter in Earth's history that followed the Paleogene period and lasted from about 23 million years ago until about 2,600,000 years ago. During this span of time, Earth continued a climate trend that had already begun earlier. The planet gradually became cooler and drier in many regions. This cooling did not happen all at once. It developed slowly over millions of years, affecting oceans, continents, weather systems, plants, animals, and the environments in which they lived. At the beginning of the Neogene, the world was already cooler than it had been during much earlier parts of the Cenozoic Era. The extremely warm conditions that had existed tens of millions of years before were becoming a distant part of Earth's history. Tropical forests that had once covered vast areas of land no longer dominated as much of the planet as they had in earlier times. Instead, new environments began to spread. Open woodlands, grasslands, and drier habitats became increasingly common across many continents. The cooling of Earth's climate during the Neogene was influenced by several factors. One of the most important was the movement of the continents. The continents were not fixed in place. They continued to drift slowly across the planet's surface because of the movement of tectonic plates beneath them. As continents shifted position, ocean currents changed. These changes affected how heat was transported around the globe. Ocean currents play a major role in regulating climate. Warm currents carry heat from lower latitudes toward cooler regions, while cold currents move cooler water toward warmer areas. During the Neogene, the arrangement of continents and oceans altered the pathways of these currents. These changes helped reduce temperatures in many parts of the world and contributed to long-term cooling. The southern continent of Antarctica played an especially important role in this process. By the beginning of the Neogene, Antarctica had already become isolated from other major landmasses. Ocean waters were able to circulate around the continent more freely. This circulation helped keep warm waters away from Antarctica and encouraged the growth and persistence of large ice sheets. These Antarctic ice sheets expanded during cooler periods and stored enormous amounts of frozen water. The presence of large ice sheets reflected more sunlight back into space. Ice surfaces are highly reflective, meaning they absorb less solar energy than darker land or ocean surfaces. As the amount of ice increased, this effect strengthened cooling even further. The growth of Antarctic ice had consequences far beyond the continent itself. The storage of water in ice sheets influenced sea levels across the world. When more water became locked in ice, global sea levels fell. Lower sea levels exposed additional areas of land along coastlines and altered habitats for many living organisms. The oceans themselves experienced important changes during the Neogene. Cooler temperatures affected marine ecosystems, from shallow coastal waters to the deepest parts of the sea. Many marine organisms adapted to these changing conditions. Some species expanded into new regions, while others became restricted to smaller areas or disappeared entirely. Microscopic organisms floating in the oceans responded to climate changes as well. Their remains accumulated on the seafloor over millions of years. Today, scientists study these tiny fossils to learn about ancient climates. Variations in their distribution provide evidence of changing temperatures, ocean circulation patterns, and environmental conditions throughout the Neogene. The atmosphere also changed during this period. Carbon dioxide levels were generally lower than they had been during many earlier warm periods of Earth's history. Carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas that helps trap heat in the atmosphere. Lower concentrations of this gas can contribute to cooler global temperatures. Although carbon dioxide levels fluctuated over time, the overall trend supported continued cooling. Mountain building also influenced the climate. Several major mountain ranges continued to rise during the Neogene due to tectonic activity. When mountains rise, they affect air circulation and rainfall patterns. High mountains can force air masses upward, leading to precipitation on one side and drier conditions on the other. The uplift of large mountain systems altered weather patterns across entire continents. New highlands created barriers that influenced winds and moisture transport. Some regions became wetter, while others became drier. These changes contributed to the expansion of grasslands and other open habitats. The rise of the Himalayas is often considered one of the significant geological developments influencing climate during this era. As these mountains continued to grow through collisions between tectonic plates, they affected atmospheric circulation across Asia and beyond. Weather systems adapted to the changing landscape, influencing rainfall and seasonal conditions over vast areas. Weathering of rocks may also have contributed to cooling. When mountains rise, fresh rock surfaces become exposed. Chemical reactions involving these rocks can remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere over long periods. Although this process operates slowly, its effects accumulate over millions of years and can influence global climate. As the Neogene progressed, forests in many regions became less extensive. This did not mean forests disappeared. Vast forests still existed in tropical and temperate regions. However, open environments expanded significantly. Grasslands spread across large portions of several continents and became one of the most important ecosystems of the period. The spread of grasslands represented a major ecological development. Grasses possess characteristics that allow them to survive in environments where fires, seasonal dryness, and grazing animals are common. Their growth patterns enabled them to thrive in conditions that were becoming increasingly widespread during the Neogene. Grasslands supported a wide variety of animals. Many mammals evolved features that allowed them to live successfully in open habitats. Some developed longer legs for efficient movement across broad landscapes. Others evolved specialized teeth capable of handling grasses, which often contain tiny particles that wear down teeth over time. The cooling climate influenced the evolution of mammals in numerous ways. Mammals had already become dominant land animals after the extinction of the non-avian dinosaurs many millions of years earlier. During the Neogene, they continued to diversify and occupy a wide range of ecological roles. Large herbivores became especially common in grassland environments. Various groups of grazing mammals expanded across continents. These animals consumed grasses and other low-growing vegetation. Their feeding activities helped shape plant communities and influenced ecosystem dynamics. Predators also adapted to these changing landscapes. Open habitats required different hunting strategies than dense forests. Some carnivorous mammals evolved greater speed, endurance, and sensory abilities, suited to pursuing prey across wide areas. The cooling and drying trend affected not only mammals, but also birds. Many bird species adapted to grasslands, wetlands, forests, and coastal environments. Birds continued to diversify. filling numerous ecological niches across the planet. Marine mammals also flourished during the Neogene. Whales, dolphins, seals, and other groups experienced important evolutionary developments. Changes in ocean circulation and productivity created opportunities for various marine species. Rich feeding grounds supported large populations in many regions. The oceans contained increasing numbers of organisms adapted to cooler waters. Nutrient-rich currents helped support marine food webs. Areas where deep waters rose toward the surface often became highly productive environments, sustaining abundant marine life. Climate changes influenced rainfall patterns around the world. Some regions became more seasonal, experiencing stronger differences between wet and dry periods. Seasonal variation affected vegetation growth, water availability, and animal behavior. In many areas, increasing dryness reduced the extent of dense forests. Woodland environments became more widespread in some places, creating habitats that were intermediate between forests and open grasslands. These landscapes supported diverse communities of plants and animals. The development of more open environments had important consequences for primate evolution. During earlier periods, many primates had lived primarily in forests. As forests contracted in certain regions and open habitats expanded, some primate populations faced new environmental pressures. In Africa, these environmental changes formed part of the background for the evolution of early members of the human lineage. The transition was complex and occurred over long periods. Different habitats existed side by side, including forests, woodlands, river valleys, and grasslands. Changing climates influenced the resources available to animals living in these regions. The Neogene witnessed the appearance and evolution of numerous ape species. Fossil evidence indicates that apes occupied various parts of Africa, Europe, and Asia during different stages of the period. Environmental shifts affected their distribution and survival. Some ape populations adapted successfully to changing conditions, while others disappeared. The fossil record reveals a dynamic history of diversification, migration, and extinction, linked partly to climate and environmental changes. Throughout the Neogene, the continents continued to move gradually toward positions similar to those seen today. Geological processes reshaped coastlines, mountains, valleys, and ocean basins. These changes interacted with climate in complex ways. Volcanic activity remained an important part of Earth's geological system. Volcanoes release gases and particles into the atmosphere. Over short timescales, large eruptions could influence climate by reducing incoming sunlight. Over longer periods, volcanic processes contributed to the cycling of carbon and other elements through Earth's systems. Sea levels fluctuated repeatedly during the Neogene. Expanding and shrinking ice sheets influenced how much water was stored on land. Tectonic activity and changes in ocean basin shapes also affected sea levels. These fluctuations altered coastal habitats and influenced patterns of biological evolution. Shallow seas sometimes retreated from continental interiors, exposing new land surfaces. Rivers adjusted to changing landscapes, carving valleys and transporting sediments. Sediments accumulated in basins, preserving records of ancient climates and ecosystems. Scientists study these sediment layers to reconstruct environmental conditions during the Neogene. Fossils, mineral compositions, chemical signatures, and other evidence help reveal how temperatures, rainfall, vegetation, and animal communities changed through time. One important event during the later Neogene involved the formation of a land connection between North America and South America. Tectonic processes eventually created the Isthmus of Panama, linking the two continents. This development altered ocean circulation patterns and affected global climate systems. The new land bridge allowed animals to migrate between the continents. Mammals, birds, reptiles, and other organisms moved into regions that had previously been isolated. This exchange of species had major ecological consequences. The closure of marine connections between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans also changed ocean currents. These changes may have strengthened some circulation patterns that transported heat around the globe. Scientists continue to study the precise ways these developments influenced climate. As temperatures continued to decline, polar regions became increasingly dominated by ice. Antarctica remained heavily glaciated. Evidence suggests that cooling trends also influence conditions in the northern hemisphere, setting the stage for later glacial cycles. The late Neogene saw environmental conditions that were approaching those of the following Quaternary period. Ice sheets and glaciers became increasingly important components of Earth's climate system. Variations in Earth's orbit and axial orientation influenced the distribution of solar energy received by different regions. These astronomical factors affected climate patterns over long intervals. Changes in Earth's orbit around the Sun, the tilt of its axis, and the wobble of its rotational axis influenced seasonal and regional climates. As global temperatures declined, these variations became increasingly capable of triggering significant expansions and contractions of ice. The interaction between orbital cycles and existing cooling trends helped shape environmental conditions during the closing stages of the Neogene. Climate became more variable, with fluctuations occurring on different timescales. Plant communities responded continually to these changing conditions. Species migrated as climates shifted. Some expanded into new territories, while others retreated to regions where suitable conditions remained available. The distribution of vegetation across continents was never static. Grasslands became particularly important across Africa, Eurasia, North America, and parts of South America. Different types of grasses evolved and spread according to local environmental conditions. Fire played a role in maintaining many grassland ecosystems by limiting the expansion of woody vegetation. Evidence from fossil pollen provides valuable information about ancient vegetation. Pollen grains preserved in sediments allow scientists to identify the types of plants that existed in specific regions at different times. These records reveal significant changes in vegetation during the Neogene. Animals adapted in many ways to the spread of grasslands. Grazing species developed high-crowned teeth capable of withstanding wear caused by abrasive plant material. Limb structures evolved in response to movement across open terrain. Digestive systems adapted to process new food sources. Large herds of herbivorous mammals became characteristic features of many grassland ecosystems. Their presence influenced nutrient cycling, vegetation structure, and predator-prey relationships. Ecosystems became increasingly shaped by interactions among plants, herbivores, carnivores, and environmental factors. The cooling climate also affected freshwater systems. Rivers, lakes, and wetlands responded to changes in rainfall and temperature. Some water bodies expanded while others shrank. Aquatic organisms adapted to evolving environmental conditions. Fish populations experienced shifts in distribution as temperatures and habitats changed. Freshwater ecosystems supported a wide variety of species, many of which evolved in response to local conditions. Insects remained among the most abundant and diverse groups of organisms throughout the Neogene. They occupied virtually every terrestrial habitat. Pollinating insects maintained important relationships with flowering plants, while countless other species participated in decomposition, nutrient recycling, and food webs. Flowering plants continued to dominate terrestrial vegetation. Their evolutionary success was linked to diverse reproductive strategies, interactions with pollinators, and adaptability to changing environments. Different plant communities flourished under varying climatic conditions. The cooling trend was not uniform across all regions or all times. Periods of relative warmth occurred within the broader pattern of long-term cooling. Climate systems are influenced by numerous interacting factors, producing fluctuations at local, regional, and global scales. Some regions retained warm climates throughout much of the Neogene. Tropical areas continued to support rainforests rich in biodiversity. Coral reefs persisted in suitable marine environments, although changing sea levels and temperatures influenced their distribution. Marine ecosystems underwent substantial evolutionary changes. Various groups of mollusks, fish, marine mammals, and plankton adapted to shifting environmental conditions. Ocean productivity patterns changed as circulation systems evolved. The fossil record of the Neogene is exceptionally valuable because it documents many developments closely connected to modern ecosystems. Numerous plant and animal groups that are familiar today either originated, diversified, or expanded significantly during this period. Geological evidence from ice cores, marine sediments, lake deposits, cave formations, and fossil assemblages allows scientists to reconstruct past climates with increasing detail. These records reveal a world undergoing gradual but persistent transformation. The atmosphere, oceans, land surfaces, and living organisms formed interconnected systems. Changes in one part of the Earth system influenced others. Cooling temperatures affected vegetation. Vegetation influenced carbon cycling. Carbon cycling influenced atmospheric composition. Atmospheric changes affected climate. Climate influenced ice sheets, oceans, and ecosystems. Over millions of years, these interactions produced profound environmental changes. Forests shifted, grasslands expanded, mountains rose, coastlines moved, and species evolved. The cooling trend that characterized much of the Neogene reshaped habitats across the globe. By the end of the period, Earth possessed many features that would become familiar in the following stage of geological history. Large Antarctic ice sheets persisted, grasslands covered extensive regions, ocean circulation patterns had evolved substantially, and many modern groups of animals and plants were firmly established. The continued cooling of Earth's climate during the Neogene was therefore not a single event, but a long sequence of interconnected geological, atmospheric, oceanic, and biological developments unfolding across millions of years. These developments affected every continent, every ocean basin, and countless forms of life, shaping ecosystems, influencing evolutionary pathways, altering landscapes, changing sea levels, modifying weather patterns, directing migrations, affecting biodiversity, and contributing to the environmental conditions that characterized the closing stages of the Neogene and the beginning of the geological period that followed. The Quaternary period is the most recent period in Earth's long geological history. It began about 2,580,000 years ago and continues into the present day. This period is known for major changes in climate, repeated advances and retreats of vast ice sheets, the development of modern landscapes, and the evolution and spread of human beings. During this time, Earth experienced a series of cold intervals, commonly known as ice ages. These cold periods shaped continents, oceans, rivers, mountains, plants, animals, and human societies in profound ways. At the beginning of the Quaternary period, Earth had already been cooling for many millions of years. The continents were close to their modern positions, and ocean currents had changed significantly from earlier periods. Mountain-building events in different parts of the world had raised enormous ranges that influenced atmospheric circulation and rainfall patterns. These long-term geological processes helped create conditions that favored colder climates. The Quaternary period is divided into two epochs. The first is called the Pleistocene epoch, which began approximately 2,580,000 years ago and lasted until about 11,700 years ago. The second is the Holocene epoch, which began about 11,700 years ago and continues today. Most of the major ice ages occurred during the Pleistocene, while the Holocene has generally been a warmer interval between major glacial advances. One of the most important characteristics of the Quaternary period was the repeated growth of enormous continental ice sheets. During cold phases, ice spread across large areas of North America, Europe, and Asia. These ice sheets reached thicknesses of several kilometers in some places. Vast regions that are now covered by forests, cities, farms, and lakes were once buried beneath massive layers of ice. The growth of ice sheets was linked to changes in Earth's orbit around the Sun. The shape of Earth's orbit, the tilt of its axis, and the direction in which the axis pointed changed slowly over long periods of time. These variations affected how much solar energy reached different parts of the planet. When conditions favored cooler summers in northern regions, snow that fell during winter survived through the summer months. Over time, this surviving snow accumulated and compressed into ice. As more snow fell and more ice formed, glaciers expanded across the land. The climate of the Quaternary period did not remain continuously cold. Instead, it alternated between glacial periods and interglacial periods. During glacial periods, temperatures dropped, ice sheets expanded, and sea levels fell. During interglacial periods, temperatures rose, ice melted, and sea levels increased. These shifts occurred many times throughout the Quaternary. As ice sheets expanded, enormous amounts of water became trapped in frozen form. This caused global sea levels to drop significantly. In some periods, sea levels were more than 100 meters lower than they are today. Areas that are currently underwater became exposed land. New land bridges appeared between regions that are now separated by seas and oceans. One of the most famous land bridges connected northeastern Asia and northwestern North America. This region, known as Beringia, existed because sea levels were much lower during glacial periods. Animals and eventually humans crossed this broad stretch of land. The movement of species across Beringia played an important role in the distribution of life across the northern hemisphere. The expansion of glaciers transformed the landscape wherever they moved. Glaciers acted as powerful agents of erosion. As they advanced, they scraped, crushed, and transported rock. Huge quantities of sediment were carried within and beneath the ice. When glaciers melted, these materials were deposited across the land. Many familiar landforms were created by glacial activity. Valleys were reshaped, hills were altered, and large basins were carved into the ground. Countless lakes formed where glaciers excavated depressions or left behind natural barriers. Regions such as Canada, northern Europe, and parts of the northern United States still display the marks left by ancient ice sheets. The Great Lakes of North America owe much of their existence to glacial processes. Massive ice sheets modified pre-existing river systems and excavated large depressions that later filled with water. Similar processes occurred in many other parts of the world, creating freshwater lakes that continue to influence ecosystems and human settlement patterns. Glaciers also affected river systems. Rivers were diverted, blocked, or redirected as ice advanced and retreated. Meltwater flowing from glaciers created powerful streams that transported vast quantities of sand, gravel, and other sediments. These materials accumulated in extensive deposits that remain visible today. The climate changes of the Quaternary period strongly influenced vegetation. As temperatures fluctuated, plant communities shifted their ranges. Forests expanded during warmer intervals and contracted during colder intervals. Grasslands spread across many regions during cooler and drier conditions. Tundra environments developed near the edges of ice sheets and in high-latitude regions. Plants had to adapt to changing conditions or move into suitable habitats. Species migrated across continents in response to climate shifts. Some populations became isolated from others, leading to genetic changes over time. These movements and adaptations contributed to the development of modern ecosystems. Animal populations also experienced dramatic changes. Many species adjusted their ranges as climates changed. During colder periods, animals adapted to cold conditions occupied large territories. During warmer periods, species associated with temperate environments expanded their distributions. The Quaternary period became home to a remarkable collection of large mammals, often called megafauna. These included mammoths, mastodons, giant ground sloths, woolly rhinoceroses, giant deer, saber-toothed cats, and many other large animals. Some of these species were highly specialized for life in cold environments. The woolly mammoth became one of the most recognizable animals of the Ice Ages. It possessed a thick coat of hair, a layer of insulating fat, and other features that helped it survive in cold climates. Mammoths inhabited extensive grasslands and open environments across parts of Eurasia and North America. The woolly rhinoceros lived across large regions of Eurasia during cold intervals. Like mammoths, it possessed adaptations that helped it withstand harsh conditions. Fossils and preserved remains found in frozen ground have provided scientists with valuable information about its appearance and biology. Large predators also thrived during the Quaternary period. Saber-toothed cats, large wolves, cave lions, and bears occupied various habitats. These predators hunted herbivores and played important roles in ecosystem dynamics. Their populations rose and fell alongside those of their prey. Repeated climate changes created constant challenges for animal populations. Habitats shifted, food, resources changed, and migration routes were altered. Some species successfully adapted to new conditions, while others struggled to survive. Extinction and evolution occurred throughout the period. The Quaternary period is especially important because it witnessed the rise and spread of modern humans. Early members of the human lineage had already appeared before the beginning of the Quaternary, but significant developments occurred during this period. Human ancestors adapted to changing environments, developed new technologies, and gradually expanded across the globe. Several human species lived during the Quaternary period. These included species such as Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Homo heidelbergensis, Neanderthals, Denisovans, and eventually Homo sapiens. Each occupied particular regions and adapted to local conditions. Homo erectus became one of the first human species to spread widely beyond Africa. This species developed tools, used fire, and survived in a variety of environments. Its expansion across Africa and Eurasia represented a major stage in human history. Neanderthals occupied large areas of Europe and Western Asia. They lived through multiple glacial and interglacial cycles. Their bodies displayed characteristics associated with cold environments, including robust builds and adaptations that helped conserve heat. Neanderthals developed sophisticated tools, hunted large animals, and cared for members of their communities. Denisovans are known primarily from fossils and genetic evidence. Although much remains unknown about them, research indicates that they occupied parts of Asia and interacted with other human groups. Genetic traces of Denisovans survive in some modern human populations. Homo sapiens emerged in Africa during the Quaternary period and eventually spread across every continent except Antarctica. This expansion occurred over many thousands of years. Human groups adapted to deserts, forests, grasslands, coastlines, mountains, and cold northern environments. Climate variability may have influenced human evolution by creating changing environmental challenges. Populations that could adapt to shifting conditions gained advantages in survival and reproduction. Flexibility in behavior, cooperation, communication, and technological innovation became increasingly important. The development of stone tools played a major role in human success. Early tools became more sophisticated over time. Humans learned to shape stone into cutting implements, hunting weapons, and other useful objects. Technological advances allowed people to exploit a wider range of resources. Control of fire represented another important achievement. Fire provided warmth, protection, and the ability to cook food. It enabled humans to occupy colder regions and extend activities into nighttime hours. The use of fire became an essential aspect of human life. During glacial periods, human populations often faced challenging conditions. Cold temperatures, changing vegetation, and shifting animal populations required flexibility and adaptation. Groups moved in search of food and suitable habitats. Migration became an important strategy for survival. As glaciers expanded and sea levels fell, new migration routes became available. Human groups crossed land bridges and entered previously inaccessible regions. These movements contributed to the settlement of new continents and the spread of cultures. Evidence suggests that humans reached Australia during the Quaternary period. Reaching this continent required crossing stretches of water, indicating significant advances in planning and technology. Human populations adapted to Australia's diverse environments and established long-lasting cultural traditions. Human migration into the Americas occurred later in the Quaternary period. Lower sea levels exposed Beringia, creating a connection between Asia and North America. Groups gradually moved into new territories and eventually spread throughout North and South America. The end of the last major glacial period brought significant environmental changes. Temperatures increased, glaciers retreated, and sea levels rose. Coastlines shifted, habitats changed, and ecosystems reorganized. Human societies adapted to these developments in various ways. The retreat of ice sheets released enormous volumes of meltwater into the oceans. Rising sea levels flooded coastal plains and submerged land bridges. Regions that had once connected continents disappeared beneath the sea. Human populations living in coastal areas experienced substantial environmental transformations. As climates warmed, forests expanded into areas previously occupied by tundra and grassland. Animal distributions changed accordingly. Some cold-adapted species retreated toward higher latitudes or higher elevations, while others experienced population declines. The extinction of many large mammals occurred near the end of the Pleistocene epoch. Mammoths, mastodons, giant ground sloths, and numerous other species disappeared from large portions of the world. Scientists continue to study the reasons for these extinctions. Climate change, environmental shifts, human hunting, and combinations of multiple factors have all been investigated as possible causes. The beginning of the Holocene epoch marked the start of a generally warmer climatic interval. Although temperatures continued to fluctuate, conditions became relatively stable compared with many earlier parts of the Quaternary. This stability supported important developments in human societies. Agriculture emerged in several regions during the Holocene. People began cultivating plants and domesticating animals. Permanent settlements became more common. Villages grew into towns, and towns eventually developed into cities. These transformations reshaped landscapes and human relationships with the environment. The climate of the Holocene has not remained completely constant. Periods of warming and cooling have occurred throughout the epoch. Regional variations affected rainfall patterns, vegetation, and human societies. Nevertheless, large continental ice sheets no longer covered vast portions of the northern hemisphere as they had during the most extensive glacial periods. Even today, remnants of the Quaternary ice ages remain visible. Large ice sheets still exist in Greenland and Antarctica. Mountain glaciers survive in many regions. These frozen reservoirs contain immense quantities of fresh water and continue to influence global climate and sea levels. Scientists study ice cores extracted from glaciers and ice sheets to learn about past climates. These cores preserve layers of snow that accumulated over thousands of years. Tiny bubbles trapped within the ice contain samples of ancient atmospheres. Analysis of these records provides information about temperature, greenhouse gases, volcanic eruptions, and environmental conditions from different periods of Earth's history. Sediments deposited in lakes and oceans also preserve evidence of Quaternary climate changes. Fossils, pollen grains, chemical signatures, and other indicators help reconstruct past environments. Together, these records reveal a detailed picture of climate fluctuations over long timescales. The study of the Quaternary period has transformed scientific understanding of climate systems. Researchers have identified connections between orbital cycles, atmospheric composition, ocean circulation, ice sheet dynamics, and ecological responses. These interactions help explain the repeated advances and retreats of glaciers. Volcanic activity continued throughout the Quaternary period and occasionally influenced climate. Large eruptions released ash and gases into the atmosphere. Some eruptions temporarily reduced global temperatures by blocking portions of incoming sunlight. The environmental effects varied depending on the size and location of eruptions. Ocean currents played a major role in distributing heat around the planet. Changes in ocean circulation affected regional climates and influenced the growth or melting of ice sheets. Interactions between oceans and the atmosphere contributed to complex climate patterns that evolved throughout the Quaternary. The Quaternary period also witnessed the formation and modification of many modern coastlines. Falling and rising sea levels repeatedly altered shorelines. River valleys were flooded during warmer periods, creating estuaries and bays. Coastal ecosystems adjusted continuously to changing conditions. Permafrost developed across extensive northern regions during cold intervals. This permanently frozen ground influenced vegetation, hydrology, and animal life. In some places, ancient plant and animal remains became preserved within frozen sediments for thousands of years. Dust, carried by winds, represented another important feature of glacial environments. Strong winds transported fine sediments across large distances. Deposits known as loess accumulated in various regions and later became fertile soils that supported vegetation and agriculture. The interaction between climate, geology, plants, animals, and humans created a dynamic world throughout the Quaternary period. Environmental conditions changed repeatedly, sometimes gradually and sometimes rapidly. Living organisms continuously responded to these challenges through migration, adaptation, and evolution. research into the Quaternary continues to provide valuable information about Earth's natural systems. New discoveries from fossils, archaeological sites, ice cores, genetic studies, and geological records expand knowledge of how climates changed, how ecosystems responded, and how human populations developed within a world shaped by recurring ice ages. The evidence preserved in rocks, sediments, ice, and fossils allows scientists to reconstruct increasingly detailed accounts of this period, revealing the long history of environmental change that has influenced the modern planet and the living communities that inhabit it today. The spread of humans during the late Quaternary was one of the most important developments in the history of life on Earth. During this long period, human populations gradually expanded from their original homelands and moved across vast regions of Africa, Asia, Europe, Australia, and eventually the Americas and remote islands of the oceans. These movements took place over many thousands of years and were influenced by changing climates, shifting environments, the search for food, population growth, and the remarkable ability of humans to adapt to different conditions. The late Quaternary covered the latter part of the Quaternary period, a time characterized by repeated cycles of colder and warmer climates. Large ice sheets advanced and retreated across many parts of the northern hemisphere. These climatic changes affected landscapes, sea levels, rivers, forests, grasslands, deserts, and coastlines. Human groups lived through these environmental changes and learned how to survive in a wide variety of habitats. Modern humans first evolved in Africa. Fossil evidence and genetic studies indicate that the ancestors of all living people originated on that continent. Early populations of Homo sapiens developed physical and behavioral traits that distinguish modern humans from earlier human species. These populations lived in different regions of Africa and adapted to local environments, ranging from grasslands and woodlands to river valleys and coastal areas. For many thousands of years, humans remained within Africa. During this time, they developed increasingly sophisticated tools and technologies. Stone tools became more specialized and were used for hunting, cutting, scraping, and processing materials. People learned to work with bone, wood, and other natural resources. They also developed social structures that enabled cooperation among larger groups. Environmental conditions in Africa changed repeatedly during the late Quaternary. Periods of increased rainfall transformed some dry regions into greener landscapes with lakes and rivers. At other times, droughts reduced available resources and altered patterns of animal migration. These environmental fluctuations encouraged human populations to move into new territories and explore unfamiliar regions. As populations grew and knowledge expanded, some groups began moving beyond Africa. One of the most significant events in human history was the dispersal of Homo sapiens into southwestern Asia. This movement occurred through routes that connected northeastern Africa with the Arabian Peninsula and nearby regions. Lower sea levels during colder climatic periods sometimes exposed land areas that made migration easier. The first groups entering Asia encountered landscapes that differed from those they had known in Africa. They found deserts, mountains, river systems, coastal plains, and forests. Human adaptability allowed them to survive under these varying conditions. They learned about local plants and animals and modified their hunting and gathering practices accordingly. The expansion into Asia did not occur as a single migration involving one group of people. Instead, it unfolded over many generations. Small communities moved gradually, establishing new settlements and spreading across large areas. Different groups followed different routes, creating a complex pattern of migration and settlement. As humans spread through Asia, they encountered other human species that had evolved earlier. These included populations commonly known as Neanderthals and Denisovans. Evidence from genetic studies shows that interactions occurred between these groups and modern humans. As a result, traces of Neanderthal and Denisovan ancestry remain present in many human populations today. The movement into Europe represented another major stage in human expansion. Europe, during the late Quaternary, experienced dramatic climatic changes associated with advancing and retreating ice sheets. Large portions of northern Europe were periodically covered by ice, while southern regions provided environments where humans could survive during colder intervals. The earliest modern humans entering Europe encountered landscapes inhabited by a variety of animals, including mammoths, woolly rhinoceroses, reindeer, bison, horses, and other species adapted to cold environments. Human communities developed hunting techniques that enabled them to exploit these resources effectively. They produced specialized stone tools and used animal materials to create clothing, shelters, and equipment. Life in Ice Age Europe required significant adaptation. Winters could be severe, and food availability varied seasonally. Human groups developed strategies for coping with these challenges. They built shelters, controlled fire, stored resources, and maintained social networks that facilitated cooperation and survival. The spread of humans across Europe gradually led to the replacement of earlier human populations. Over time, modern humans became the dominant human species throughout the continent. Archaeological evidence suggests that this process unfolded over many thousands of years and involved complex interactions among different populations. While some groups moved westward into Europe, others continued eastward across Asia. Human populations eventually occupied regions extending from the Middle East to Eastern Asia. They settled near rivers, lakes, coastlines, forests, and grasslands. Different environments encouraged the development of diverse cultural traditions and technologies. The expansion into Eastern Asia exposed humans to a wide range of climatic conditions. Some regions experienced cold winters and seasonal changes, while others supported subtropical vegetation. Human communities adapted their tools, clothing, hunting methods, and settlement patterns to local circumstances. Coastal areas played an important role in human dispersal. Shorelines often provided abundant resources, including fish, shellfish, marine mammals, birds, and edible plants. Coastal routes may have enabled some populations to move rapidly across large distances. Access to marine resources supported population growth and encouraged exploration of new territories. One of the most remarkable achievements of late Quaternary humans was the settlement of Australia. Reaching Australia required crossing stretches of open water. Even when sea levels were lower than they are today, complete land connections did not exist between Southeast Asia and Australia. Human groups therefore needed some form of watercraft or other means of crossing these waterways. The arrival of humans in Australia marked a major milestone in human history. It demonstrated planning, cooperation, and technological capability. Once established on the continent, people spread across a variety of environments, including coastal regions, forests, grasslands, and arid interior landscapes. Australian environments presented unique challenges and opportunities. The continent was home to many distinctive animal species. Human populations adapted to local conditions and developed cultural traditions suited to their surroundings. They learned how to obtain food and water in environments that varied greatly from one region to another. Climate continued to influence human movements throughout the late Quaternary. During colder phases, large amounts of water became locked within continental ice sheets. As a result, global sea levels dropped significantly. Lower sea levels exposed coastal plains and land bridges that connected areas currently separated by water. One of the most important land bridges was Beringia, which connected northeastern Asia and northwestern North America. During periods of low sea level, this vast region provided a route through which humans could enter the Americas. Beringia included grasslands and other habitats capable of supporting human populations and the animals upon which they depended. The peopling of the Americas represented one of the final major stages in the global spread of humans. Groups moving through Beringia gradually entered North America. Some populations may have followed routes along the Pacific coast, while others moved through interior regions as environmental conditions permitted. The earliest inhabitants of the Americas encountered landscapes ranging from Arctic environments to temperate forests, grasslands, deserts, mountains, and tropical regions. Human adaptability once again played a crucial role in successful settlement. Communities adjusted their ways of life to local conditions and resources. The spread through the Americas occurred over many generations. Human groups moved southward and eventually occupied both North America and South America. Archaeological discoveries indicate that people reached a wide variety of environments and established settlements across enormous distances. As populations spread throughout the Americas, they hunted animals, gathered plants, fished in rivers and coastal waters, and developed technologies suited to local environments. Different regions encouraged different cultural practices, reflecting the diversity of landscapes occupied by human communities. The late Quaternary was also marked by important developments in human culture. Population movements were accompanied by the spread of ideas, technologies, and social traditions. Stone tool industries became increasingly varied and sophisticated. People developed new methods of hunting, processing food, and producing clothing. Artistic expression became an important feature of human societies during this period. Archaeological evidence includes cave paintings, carvings, engravings, ornaments, and decorated objects. These creations provide insight into human thought, communication, identity, and cultural traditions. Language likely played a significant role in the success of human expansion. Complex communication enabled cooperation among individuals and groups. It facilitated the transmission of knowledge about hunting techniques, tool production, environmental conditions, and social practices. Through language, information could be preserved and passed from one generation to the next. Social organization also contributed to human success. Families and larger communities worked together to obtain food, care for children, protect vulnerable individuals, and respond to environmental challenges. Cooperation increased the ability of groups to survive in difficult conditions and expand into new territories. Fire remained a crucial technology throughout the late Quaternary. Humans used fire for warmth, cooking, protection, and the modification of landscapes. Controlled burning could influence vegetation patterns and create conditions favorable for certain plants and animals. Fire also supported occupation of colder environments, where survival would otherwise have been more difficult. Dietary flexibility was another important factor. Human populations consumed a wide variety of foods depending on local availability. These included large mammals, smaller animals, fish, shellfish, birds, fruits, seeds, roots, nuts, and other plant resources. The ability to exploit different food sources increased resilience in changing environments. The changing climate of the late Quaternary repeatedly altered ecosystems. Forests expanded and contracted. Grasslands shifted location, rivers changed course, and coastlines moved as sea levels rose and fell. Human groups responded to these changes through migration, adaptation, and innovation. The last glacial maximum, occurring during the coldest phase of the most recent ice age, had a major impact on human populations. Vast ice sheets covered large portions of northern North America and northern Europe. Regions near the ice margins experienced harsh climatic conditions. Human groups often concentrated in areas where resources remained available. Following this cold interval, global temperatures gradually increased. Ice sheets began to melt and sea levels rose. Landscapes changed dramatically as glaciers retreated. New habitats became available for human occupation, while rising seas submerged some coastal areas that had previously supported settlements and migration routes. The warming climate encouraged population expansion into newly accessible regions. Forests spread across parts of Europe and North America. Lakes and rivers formed in areas previously covered by ice. Human communities adjusted their economic activities to changing environmental conditions. The late Quaternary also witnessed the extinction of many large animal species. Mammoths, mastodons, giant ground sloths, giant kangaroos, and numerous other forms of megafauna disappeared during this period. Scientists continue to investigate the causes of these extinctions. Climate change and human activities are among the factors frequently examined. Human populations living during this time had to respond to the disappearance of important animal resources. In many areas, communities adapted by focusing on smaller animals, fish, and plant foods. These adjustments contributed to the development of new economic strategies and cultural practices. Technological innovation continued throughout the late Quaternary. Stone tools became increasingly refined. Projectile technologies improved hunting efficiency. People created needles, fishing equipment, traps, containers, and many other useful objects. These innovations enhanced survival and supported expansion into diverse environments. Trade and exchange networks emerged among some populations. Materials such as stone, shells, pigments, and other valued resources sometimes moved considerable distances between communities. These networks facilitated the spread of ideas and strengthened social connections across large regions. Human populations were never isolated completely from environmental influences. Weather patterns, resource availability, disease, competition, and geographic barriers all affected movement and settlement. Mountains, deserts, rivers, and ice sheets sometimes limited migration, while favorable conditions encouraged expansion. As people occupied more regions, local populations gradually developed distinct cultural traditions. Differences in environment, available resources, social organization, and historical experience contributed to cultural diversity. Even communities sharing common ancestry often developed unique ways of life after generations of separation. The settlement of islands represented another aspect of human expansion. Some islands became occupied during periods of lower sea level when distances were shorter. Others required deliberate sea crossings. Successful island colonization demanded planning, navigation, and knowledge of marine environments. Coastal communities often became skilled fishers and navigators. Marine resources supported relatively dense populations in some regions. Access to boats expanded opportunities for travel, trade, and exploration. Over time, humans reached increasingly remote islands across different parts of the world. Genetic evidence provides valuable information about these migrations. Studies of DNA reveal patterns of ancestry and relationships among populations. Genetic data support the view that modern humans share common origins in Africa and subsequently spread throughout the world during the late Quaternary. Archaeological discoveries continue to refine understanding of these movements. Excavations uncover tools, human remains, ornaments, hearths, and other traces of past activity. Advances in dating techniques help establish timelines for migration and settlement. New discoveries frequently add detail to the complex story of human expansion. Environmental evidence also contributes important information. Sediments, pollen, animal remains, plant remains, and ice cores provide records of past climates and ecosystems. These records help researchers understand the conditions faced by human populations during different stages of their dispersal. The spread of humans during the late Quaternary transformed the distribution of our species. From origins in Africa, human populations gradually occupied nearly every major landmass on Earth. They adapted to deserts, forests, mountains, grasslands, Arctic regions, tropical environments, coastlines, and islands. Each migration involved learning, innovation, cooperation, and adjustment to local conditions. Human communities carried knowledge, technologies, cultural traditions, and social practices into new territories. They interacted with unfamiliar environments and often encountered new challenges. Through continued adaptation, populations established themselves across a wide range of habitats. The late Quaternary therefore represents the period during which humans achieved a truly global presence, spreading across continents and shaping the history of countless regions through their movements, activities, and growing populations. As human populations became established across larger areas during the late Quaternary, the process of movement and settlement continued in many directions. Migration was not a single event that ended once a region was reached. Communities often shifted their locations over generations as environmental conditions changed, resources became scarce or abundant, and new opportunities emerged. Some groups remained highly mobile and followed seasonal patterns, while others returned repeatedly to favored locations that provided reliable access to food, water, and shelter.